Hello there, you beautiful people. My name is Willow, and welcome back to another Step-Stool Laddercast, where today we're going to be looking at a 1v1 played on the map Badlands version 4. And of course, since it's a Step-Stool ladder, both of these players are below 1,000 rating on the 1v1 ladder. Let's go ahead and get into introducing our players, starting in the top with the blue player and in the bottom with the red player. But before we do, please consider going down below, hitting that like button, hitting the subscribe button, and maybe the bell, and checking out my Patreon and channel membership. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and introduce our first player, the blue UEF, the man with the templates. And we're gonna have to see if he shows off any more of those beautiful templates today. His name is Vaangard, and he is back from our sister series, Subpar Commander. Moving on down to the down to the south, we have a red Aeon, which is easily one of the best factions, going first land by the name of BLAKEAuST, and that should be all of our players, because of course it's a 1v1, and we can talk about the map a little bit. 9,140 reclaim on the map as it stands right now. We got some big pockets right here near their bases of about 1,600. Then we have these areas in the middle that are really worth fighting for, as they're nearing about 1,000. And then, of course, you have everything else spread out between kind of areas right here with 800, round behind the base around 700, 800. There's a lot of reclaim. There's also a ton of mass points, so we should be expecting these players to get up to a very high economies very quickly, as long as they don't die early or lose all of their bases. And there's 3 different major expansions along with mexes in the back to be taken, as well as these mexes in the middle. Gonna have to see who can maintain their map control over their half of the map. Also, of course, we have these 2 raised areas on either side of the map that are kind of like parentheses, and if you look at it in a very fun way, right here, it doesn't matter which side of the map you're looking at, right here is the smiley face. Then, right here is the smiley face. And then, right here, is the smiley face with a mustache. And same the other way around. So in reality, Badlands is just a bunch of smiley faces, and that makes me very happy. And overall, these players working on expanding. I would say Vaangard's getting the better of the expansion, as he's already ahead on mass extractor count, if I'm looking at this correctly, and also he's up a little bit of mass generation. But there is always a chance for Blake to show us some insane killer strategies. We have some Mech Marine Spirit, or no, Mech Marine Snoop. Spirit is the Aeon one. Mech Marine Snoop combinations out on the field currently, which could come over and try and deal some damage to one of these expanding engineers. But first, of course, Vaangard would need to know where the engineers are, and he'd want to avoid the commander. He has 3 different groups of this kind of harassment party here in the middle. Meanwhile, Blake not really obsessed or really caring about his opponent existing. He's kind of just over here expanding, building up factories, but he's not producing any kind of attacking units. Just here in the middle, getting himself some reclaim with some automated patrols for reclaim, and just in general trying to grab his side of the map and eco up a little bit to help himself out. Overall, yet again, kind of a boring opener from both players, but that is to be expected on one of these more macro-focused games. And of course, we can always just enjoy, now that I've shown you it, you can't unsee it, all of the smiley faces on the map. I think my favorite smiley face is this one. It's also, it could be like a surprised face with like this is the forehead area. This is your eyebrows. Here's your eyes. Here's the, oh no, I'm surprised. Also, there's the Snoop is finally firing at something, so we have something to talk about. Snoop firing on mass extractor for Blake. Mech Marine gonna come in, also gonna try and deal a little bit of damage over here. I think, yep, that's just gonna be shut down by the comm. But over here on the eastern side, we have the same combination trying to get some damage done, as well as a striker getting in here with this reclaim field, gonna be able to scoop up a few engineer kills for himself, as the Aurora on the wrong side of the canyons, or the craters. And overall, a lot of harassment now coming out from Vaangard. Vaangard putting a lot of pressure on his opponent. Over here to the eastern side, it looks as though at least one mass extractor going to fall, possibly more to this Mech Marine. In the center, we already have 4 kills racked up on this striker, and all of those I would assume would be on engineers. It's going to be really brutal for Blake, going to really set him behind in this game. Another striker with 2 kills. These strikers and Mech Marines are really, they're just coming up around the map, and because Blake didn't start producing units until after they showed up, they're getting a lot of damage done. A ton of engineers have gone down, and more are to follow as more and more units start to pour down the central causeway from Vanguard's base. He also has a T1 bomber in the area, which is going to come in and do terrible, oh, never mind, it's not going to go for engineers. It's going to try and kill a Hydro, which, given enough time, it might just do that. Let's see if that happens. T1 radar system on the way. Would love to see a mobile anti-air to deal with this bomber. He is cleaning up the land forces, but this striker has managed to pick up a kill onto a factory. Mech Marine and Snoop are working together to try and kill off more of these mass extractors. Not really getting very much out of it so far, though. The striker over here going to be getting another mech's kill, and overall all of this harassment out from Vaangard very much so paying itself off, very much so showing its worth. And the T1 Scorcher bomber looking as though it may get close to killing off the Hydro. If he does a hover bomb, he can definitely kill off this Hydro. But if he doesn't, then he's going to lose the bomber before the Hydro dies, if I have done the math correctly. Yeah, 122 health on the hydrocarbon. This one striker has managed to kill multiple engineers, a tank, and now is about to be taking out its 4th mass extractor. So, super effective striker right here. Even if it dies before getting this mass extractor, very much so worth it. The Aurora here, going to be trying to fire into it. Both Auroras, in fact, can. Is he going to be able to kill off the mass extractor in time? Oh, the shot was in the air, and he does. He kills off all 4 mass extractors, including an expanding engineer and an Aurora. For its troubles, that striker was an absolute Chad, just a mad lad out on the field. And now it seems as though Blake has decided he's really annoyed by his opponent doing all of this harassment, and he's gonna get his own done. And Vaangard, surprisingly, really slow to expand. He got all that harassment done, but he didn't expand as much as Blake, and Blake's managed to get even some T2 mechs in the line. So right now, Blake is challenging the eco of Vaangard, but he needs to be careful not to over-eco. He does need to continue to produce units. He's still down on overall unit count, but that is something that you can fix relatively easily once you have a bunch of factories, and he's building more factories than his opponent. So should be doing pretty good. Reclaim so far at the 8-minute mark, 1.7 thousand for Vaangard versus 700 for Blake, which basically means that Vaangard is doubling his reclaim value, which is going to be very much so important as the game goes on. Usually in these lower rated games, the player who realizes reclaim is important first wins. And right now, Blake trying to skirt his way around and trying to deny this 4-mex expansion for Vaangard. In the southwest, though, there's some tensions brewing between the units of Vaangard and Blake. Overall, though, seems that this run-by is going to get some amount of damage done. But then again, on this half of the map, there just really isn't any mexes. So the run-by is going to happen, but there's nothing for it to shoot. Vaangard is kind of come up with a catch-22 scenario. It's like, ha, your run-by got by, but now there's nothing to shoot but tanks. May as well have just stayed on your side of the map. I don't know why I all of a sudden became like a 90s cartoon villain. Ha ha! Skeletor! Wait, that's not Skeletor's voice, is it? What does Skeletor sound like? I haven't heard Skeletor's voice in a long time. But if that's close to it, let me know down in the comments. Tell me, who was your favorite villain from like the 90s, 80s, old cartoons? Who's your favorite villain? I don't know who I'd have to go with. Probably the dude from Teen Titans. I loved Teen Titans. Over here to the east, Or Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think I just liked teens as a kid. Which, okay, that's a weird sentence. The run-by cleaned up by a combination of strikers and, you know, scorchers. And overall, the game is stagnating a tiny bit. There's a little bit of skirmishing going on here in the middle, a little bit of units being traded back and forth in epic T1 battles and duels. Get ready for this episode of cinematic shots of things that are really irrelevant to the entire state of the game, because neither of these armies is going to deal any significant damage to the other. Right now, a lot of the issue that I foresee for Vaangard is he's leaving a lot more mass on his opponent's side of the map. Like, all of these battles have happened, most of them have happened on this side. Other than the reclaim field created over here by these tanks, which is admittedly significant, somewhere around 1,000 mass and tanks probably died. The general area where all the fighting's been happening has been kind of down here, and that's going to be leaving a bit of a mass field for Blake. Now, of course, yet again, a Step-Stool game, not necessarily going to mean that these players are going to utilize said situation very well, and or utilize said mass reclaim fields very well, or even notice that they exist. But Vaangard building up a new template. We've seen this man before. He has templates. I don't think that this template's going to be very useful. Whenever you look at it, which I'm trying to get you a view, pretty much no unit's going to hit those walls, but it is very pretty, and it does stop units from getting directly on top of the triad, so you know what? To each his own. If it looks good, it smells good, it tastes good, it's a nice meal or something. Who knows? Scorchers going after Aurora, which T1 bombers over against Aurora is a historically horrible matchup for the Aurora. The Aurora in general just doesn't have very many good matchups. Let's just face it. When you're so frail that a strong gust of wind is a serious threat, pretty much everything is a struggle. Right now, this PD is going to be going down. Yeah, you see the walls aren't even really protecting the T1 PD. Fat chance the T2 PD is going to be helped by those walls very much. But, as I said, it does look pretty cool. And now Vaangard is going to have to deal with this large push coming out from Blake. There were a bunch of T1 PD kind of built up over here, but the T1 PD are just dying to the overwhelming number of Aurora, and the Aurora continue to push forward, taking attritional damage from the Scorchers over here. Going to be a little bit unfortunate for these Aurora, but overall I think it's going to be alright as he continues to push forward. He's going to be running into some resistance. It's starting to get a little bit dicey on whether he should push forward or not, maybe kill off this T1 mechs and fall back, because it's starting to get a little bit suspect on the validity of continuing to just blindly push forward. T2 has been achieved by Vaangard, T2 land to be specific, and he's got 2 T2 land HQs. One redundancy is nice, and he's going for a T3 land HQ. Please don't tell me you're going for 2 of them. No, he is not, and he's getting up some Sparkies and T2 engineers, which are always going to be fun to have just laying around. Gonna have to keep an eye on how his tech level progresses. We don't have T2 finished yet for Blake, which is gonna be a bit of a disadvantage once pillars start rolling out onto the field. Oh my, he has 3 T2 HQ. Vaangard, you're very active in my Discord, or you're somewhat active. You need to learn the concept of HQs. The 2, I was gonna give you a pass, because this one is like, well, this one is super protected. It's my fortress, and you're a low-level UEF player on the ladder. You're a UEF turtle. It's almost guaranteed. I mean, you're building T2 PD with walls. It's pretty turtle. But you gotta use the HQ system. It's so much more efficient. But we will let that slide, as I'm not here to coach these players. I'm just here to enjoy their gameplay. These Scorchers have gotten, holy, what the hell? 5 vet, 19 kill on that Scorcher. 16 kills, over 1,000 mass killed, and 5 vet on that Scorcher. Scorcher's getting way too much value, as it seems as though Blake has decided that air units are a bit overrated. He has interceptors, he's just not killing the bombers unless they come onto his half of the map, which seems like a misplay, because both of these bombers have paid themselves off multiple times now, and it's going to be unfortunate. Over here on the eastern side, it seems as though Blake has set up a bit of a Maginot line of T1 PDs, and maybe we'll see that extended. to try and stop Vaangard's forces. He is getting a few kills onto strikers with the Eruptor, but there are, of course, Lobos in the mix, which will be able to kill off the kill. It will kill. Forged in Fire. I've been rewatching a few seasons of Forged in Fire. It's such a good show. Even though it's really unrealistic that like anybody could create like the final challenges. Whenever they're like, all right, we're gonna just ram this sword you made into a hardened anvil, and if it doesn't break, you win. But like it's so ridiculous the things they put the weapons made on that show through. Either way, enough talking about Forge and Fire. Let's continue talking about FAF, as there are still bombers flying around and dealing way more damage than they should. On the eastern side, Vaangard continues to push through, continues to get some damage done. T2 Mex is going to be going down. Blake going to be in a rough position. Overall economies, we haven't spoken about it because it's been relatively even. With this turn of events, it's going to be Blake down about 10 to 20% eco on his opponent. That's going to be a little bit dicey. It's going to mean that he needs to either eco a little bit more or just secure up his flanks and not lose things. Manages to keep this T2 Mass Extractor alive at 72 HP. Every second that lives longer is going to be a huge win for Blake. Going to be giving him that extra mass a second and get even closer to paying itself off if it hadn't already. And Blake does need to be careful here. Most of his T2 mexes are around here in the back. He needs to make sure that nothing from over here from Vaangard manages to run by. And, wow. Okay, I was talking about the Maginot line of Eruptors, but this is the actual Maginot line, just built in FAF. Yeah, that's gonna be a fire base for the ages. He has Alohas mixed in, radars, multiple triads, buzzkills, flax. I mean, has everything. Even has a kennel, which is an interesting call. I guess that's for repairing the shield. 2 kennels, in fact. Or just general rebuild power, I guess. Over here to the east, all of this kind of attacking, skirmishing forces have been cleaned up, so Vaangard no longer putting threat down on this eastern side. I would like to point out Vaangard doing really well on map control. He has, I mean, let's just, yeah, when your map looks like this versus your opponent's map looking like this, you're doing well on map control. He has 60 to 70% of the map under his control. He's both plateaus. I'd like to see him take over these mass extractors in the middle, and it does seem as though he's building those now. And he's just being a little bit more aggressive than his opponent. This mass extractor, why is this not being built? Blake? What engineer is supposed to build this mass extractor? And where are they? Is it one of the engineers that's like supposed to be reclaiming? It hurts to just see him not take that mass extractor with so much build power in the area. But T3 land has now been achieved by Blake. We haven't really been talking about him teching up. We haven't really been talking about the tech war all that much. 78% on the T3 HQ, or at least one of them, for Vaangard. Around the map elsewhere, there's another... Oh, wait, no. Okay, I don't know if this is just going T2 or T2 HQ, but hopefully not T2 HQ. There's various factories upgrading across the map. T2 Air achieved by Vaangard, which could be dangerous. I mean, the Scorchers are getting a lot of kills. Now, if Janus just start doing the same, it's going to be huge for Vaangard, who is now building up T2 units. He's trying to stop this little incursion by Blake. It's not going to go very well for Blake. There's pillars here now. As long as the pillars don't constantly try and play at the edge of the range of the Auroras, you're going to be fine. Scorcher's going to come in, deal their damage upon the Auroras, which are clumped up. That's going to be a non-issue. Maybe a couple of T1 mexes going down, but nothing major. The thing I was speaking about, though, is T3 land has finished up for Blake, which means he's going to have Harbingers on the field, and those are going to be a huge development for his side of the map. He's also going to start building up, apparently, his own kind of artillery line to try and stop Vaangard from getting any more damage done. Vaangard has a TML online, and this could deal huge damage. There's really no TMD on the map currently for Blake. We could see even the T2 Pigeons going down for Blake, which would be a huge problem for the red Aeon player. Here in the center, he's managed to clear up this a little bit. Yet again, this template being used quite maliciously by Vaangard. He's using it in the most aggressive way. This is what this is like that meme. It's like UEF players, and it's the guy looking at the butterfly saying, "Is this a pigeon?" But instead he's saying, "Is this attacking?" Yeah, is this attacking? UEF players around the world. Ugh. Sorry about that. I had something tickling my throat. Over here on the eastern side, Blake going to be using a Harbinger, assisted by a bunch of Blazes, to try and get some aggression down onto Vaangard, and that could start dealing meaningful damage as T2 mexes are starting to go up over here, and there's a light amount of units over here, and it's just going to get a huge run by. I mean, these Blazes aren't going to be, he's not even going to try and intercept the Blazes with his own units. How long is it going to take Vaangard to notice this? He does have Janus out over here, but Janus leading the targets by quite a bit are going to drop some firebombs that'll deal some damage to the Blazes, but not all that much, not anything huge. And the run by continuing. We're about to have a Harbinger just having free reign over here on the eastern side, whereas Vaangard hasn't really gotten any harassment damage done in a while. Overall, let's look at Reclaim really quick while this run by happens, and while we continue to look at footage of it. We have about 13,000 for Vaangard and about 8,000 for Blake. So Blake's still behind on Reclaim, but not massively. Overall mass generation, though, Vaangard ahead by a decent clip. He's about 20 mass a second ahead, which is gonna, it does amount to things over a very, it doesn't take very long for that to amount to thousands upon thousands of mass a second. Or thousands upon thousands of mass over the course of a few minutes, and it's gonna be difficult if Blake doesn't manage to get even more economic damage done. Despite killing off this expansion, he's still behind about 20 mass a second, so it just shows you how hard Vaangard is currently ecoing with the capped mexes. Not that Blake is being a pushover himself. A large attack now coming out as the run by is cleaned up from Blake, and now Vaangard coming in with a full siege on this position that Blake has been holding with his comm and with a bunch of units, and this is just going to go horribly for Vaangard. This is going to leave a huge reclaim field right where all of the build power of Blake is. It may be able to kill off these artillery, which are a huge investment, but he gets to reclaim it if you do. And it doesn't even look as though the artillery are going to go down, so the artillery is still going to be here to break down this position that's been built up by Vaangard over the course of many minutes. And now these Alohas, which have been firing their missiles off, it looks as though the Alohas were going for a snipe onto the comm. I think it would have been much better to just use the Alohas to kill off all of these mass extractors. There's so many T2 mass extractors. Huge misplay out from Vaangard. I'm sure he's going to be kicking himself for that one. Is going to be building up more shields, but it's a losing battle as 3 artillery are going to really be able to put the hurt on this position. And it may be able to just take it down. T1 plasma cannons going down for Vaangard. The TMLs could be used to try and kill off the artillery, which does seem to be the case here. Putting one right in between these 2 artillery kills them both off, so that is going to be a win for Vaangard. The TMLs do pay themselves off in dividends by making this position holdable again. Over here on the eastern side, more Harbingers going to be showing up. The number of Harbingers is starting to get a little bit worrying for Vaangard, who does have T3 land finished up now, but doesn't seem to be able to produce a lot of it. He has a second air HQ, this time built back here with his T3 land HQ, that he's trying to get to T3, so we could see T3 air out from Vaangard momentarily. Down here in the center, seems as though some pillars are going to be trying to push through the center of the map and get some damage done. Not sure if that's going to be significant enough to deal any kind of major economic damage, but is going to require a response. I would be surprised if there's not a Harbinger out of this factory. Oh, yep, there's a Harbinger right there. Just walk over and kill the pillars. Up here to the northeast, it seems as though there's some Harbingers and some units out from Blake trying to push forward. Not really getting all that much done. An assault on this position from Vaangard, and Blake is about to sacrifice a lot of units right here. There's all of this reclaim on this front line. I don't know if there's a ton of engineers being used. And Blake also still not building TMD. He might be kicking himself for that very soon, as the Aloha has multiple missiles loaded, or it's up to 3 vet and 3,600 mass killed. We'll be surprised to see if it does not manage to hit any mass extractors. Still, Vaangard should have scouted by now and just realized that he has free reign with his tactical missile launcher. Could be a huge play coming out from him, and we'll try and keep track of it, but could happen at any time. And over here, this run-by from earlier that killed off all these mechs is only now being cleaned up, or maybe there was another run-by that came in. But overall, this seems as though Vanguard's having struggles holding on to these about 6 mass extractors over here on this far eastern flank. T3 Air at 74% and rising. T3 P-Gens already completed. A T3 Mass Fab being built by Vaangard, which is an interesting call when you don't even have full T3 mexes. Usually you don't resort to mass fab farming until a bit later in the game, but to each his own. I guess he has his own strategies he's going to put in place. There are currently tactical missiles being launched. Seems as though one of the tactical missiles got a T2 mex. Is it going to be able to get any more major damage done? There's so many T2 mexes kind of just sitting about. This could be devastating to Blake, who still hasn't built TMDs, so I mean, he's kind of asking for it. He's seen his opponent has tactical missile launchers and has not decided to go for a TMD of his own. The missile being launched is, I guess this one's kind of worth it if it splashes. It's going for this mex, I believe. Ooh, no, it's going for the factories. It one-shots the T2 factories. There's T3 factories now on the field and ready and roaring. Or was that a T3 factory? That might have been a T3 factory. No, that was a T2 factory. I wasn't going crazy. Volcano finally being built by Blake, and it's going to be able to stop this next incoming missile, or not. That was a mobile missile launcher, not a tactical missile launcher. Okay. T3 Air about to finish up now for Vaangard. The Harbinger force over here to the west going to need to be able to clean up all of these units coming out by Vaangard, trying to get some damage done. There's still a few PD here, which are going to produce issue, but overall it seems as though Vaangard really wants to kill off this T3 land production on this western side. He's threatened by it, but overall it's not going to really amount to much, as Blake is just going to have enough Harbingers here to clean this up. Yet again, more reclaim on this front for Blake to suck up. Speaking of reclaim, 21,000 for Vaangard, 14,000 for Blake. So both sides still having reclaim, but Vaangard kind of pulling away. He's over 25,000 mass generated ahead of his opponent, and he just seems to have a little bit better grasp on both ecoing and on map control. He's managed to take over most of the map. He has mostly T2 mexes across the board, even some of these forward mexes, like the ones on the plateau, managing to get T2. And that's going to be relatively significant, because it's going to be able to stop, or it's going to, not going to be able to stop, it's going to be able to kind of catapult him into a really good economic position as he starts to reach up towards 300 mass a second with the mass fabricator over here finishing. And now he's starting to build up broadswords and Percivals, which are two very tanky, very dangerous units to just kind of have on the field. He also has, of course, Janus's. He's spending a lot. Yeah, he's stalling over 100 mass at points. Would like to see a little bit more focus on getting some more eco. When you're ahead on eco, getting more ahead usually is a decent call, especially when you're in one of these games where it's a bit more drawn out and turtly. And currently, Vaangard holding this position pretty well. He has a lot of really just building the Maginot line. Really just building it up. As over here in the center, he's trying to build the same template over here in the center, but Harbingers are going to come in, clean this up before it even really gets started. Going to be able to get all of this killed off. There's some Titans out from Vaangard that are going to be able to just start, just going to be killed. So Vaangard in a rough position. He has a bunch of T3 production facilities over here. He has some Percivals rolling off the line, which will be pretty decent. There's now a bunch of gunships online for Vaangard. The Stinger is going to come in, try and deal damage to the Harbinger. Is going to be going down to some interceptors eventually, but he has T3 air and his opponent just doesn't. It doesn't seem as though Blake has T3 air yet. He's working on it, but he can't really afford it. He's having power struggles, and he continues to push over on this central causeway. He is going to be able to kill off these Percivals and these Titans, but is he going to have enough left over to get any meaningful damage done? Could try and get in here and kill off these T3 mexes, or the T2 and T3 mexes, or even maybe go for some of this T3 production if he's lucky. But the air power, the broadswords in combination with the Janus and that Stinger, just gonna clean up these Harbingers really quickly. But there's more always coming in the back line. Would love to see some flak kind of mixed in with this to try and prevent this kind of attritional damage going on from the air. But overall, Vaangard continuing to push forward, continuing to try and use these Harbingers to get meaningful damage done. Did manage to kill off a T2 Mech, is going to possibly kill off one of the mini T3 land HQs. How many are there? There's 2 T3 land HQs, so if he only kills off the HQ, he won't stop all of the T3 land production. But is getting a lot of damage done, is going for a lot of the production, a lot of structures going down, and Vaangard kind of just falling apart here with this giant attack through the middle. It seems as though Vaangard was doing this fancy kind of agile, I'm going to get T3 air and land at the same time. And it didn't work out because, well, he just got punched in the face by the overwhelming land that Blake's been producing. Blake gonna get a lot of value, kills off 2 T3 Mechs, kills off another T2 Mechs, is getting all of this air production over here, which was mainly making Januses and Stingers, but still, that's some of this air power that's been abusing him for a while that's just gonna be going down. The T3 land HQ over here, not gonna go down, not that it's particularly significant, it's not more or less important than just your average support factory at this point. And the units over here regrouping for Blake as he's gotten a decent amount of damage done. Of course, it does leave a huge reclaim field just in this original starting base, though, like 16,000 mass. That's going to be a lot. And of course, Vaangard going to be able to reclaim that probably relatively quickly, but it does give Blake a little bit of a reprieve. He's caught up. Vaangard was pushing towards 300 mass a second before that attack, and he's now down to 226. He's around the same level as Blake. For the first time in the while, we're going to see Blake momentarily. He went above Vaangard in mass generation, which means that that attack was kind of crucial for getting Blake back into this game, for slowing down Vaangard's economy. And now Blake has a ton of Harbingers over here, and it may be enough. I mean, he has a lot of Harbingers, 21 Harbingers versus 7 Triads in this army. It could go his way if he can focus down the Triads. The Triads are going to deal a lot of damage, and of course they outrange the Harbingers, so the Harbingers going to have struggles getting in range in the first place. But once they're in the range, they can just get underneath these shields, kill off the shield generators, and then possibly just throw everything into these Triads. I think one of the big mistakes you can make here is trying to focus on the comm of Vaangard, though. That would be a bad call. Please don't do it. And just focus on killing off this fire base and taking out this position, which has been assaulting you for such a long time. The broadswords and stingers going to be coming in. The army already cleaned up does need to start taking down these Triads. I think the Triads should be a huge thing, but he's getting stuck in that trapping of attacking the comm. The comm is going to go down to about 9,000 HP, but all of these Triads in conjunction with the air cover, there was no way the Harbingers were going to be able to just easily snipe down that comm. The Parashield going to come in and absorb more damage, and now you still have a decent number. You have 6 or so Triads here defending this position. You have the Harbingers going to be able to come back, kill off a couple more of these Triads, but they could have just focused the Triads down to begin with, and now Vaangard, with the air advantage he has, and with that army being cleaned up, and this huge reclaim field, 23,000, these reclaim fields going to start becoming huge. Whoever gets into these reclaim fields and really sucks them up, which of course we could see Suck Boys doing that, will be at a huge advantage. And now we have a Tsar on the way for Blake. Blake deciding that he has enough economy for it, and he is probably stalling. Oh, he's not stalling, so he does have enough economy to try and build this Tsar up to 7,000 HP, and rising quickly could be very dangerous. He lost on the ground, but he needs to get into this air game. Like, sure, you can build a Tsar, but if you don't have T3 air and you don't have your own, like, massive T3 air production to get ASF out, what are you going to do? He does have Swifties and ASF now trying to clean up the broadswords, but is it going to be enough? The broadsword's going to get huge damage over here. The T3 production over here going down, which means there's going to be less ground army in the very near future to be able to deal with the ground armies coming out from Vaangard. Vaangard kind of positioning to get a huge land advantage as he now has a bunch of Percivals and Titans here in the middle with the support of some T2 units and even the occasional anti-air to try and help deal with all of this, and he's going to be able to come through here in the middle, and it could be huge. Could be a game-winning attack coming out from Vaangard right here. A bit of Harbinger harass now over here on the eastern side. Maybe he can get enough done over here to try and distract Vaangard to delay this attack. The Tsar is on the way. If he can also delay for enough time for the Tsar to come online, that could be huge. And just overall, it seems as though Vaangard really needs to make a push work right here. He doesn't really have any counter for the Tsar if it does come up other than ASF. But it seems as though he's not producing ASF, really. He's producing mainly broadswords, and broadswords aren't going to win you the game right now if a Tsar comes online. I mean, unless they can kill the Comm, but the Comm should have a bunch of anti-air built, and he does. So I don't think that's a threat at the moment. The army out from Vaangard now starting to push south. It's starting to thin out the Harbingers. The Harbingers just not enough to deal with the might of the Percival and Pillar army here. And the Percivals are going to be able to come in here once they notice that Tsar, which I'm not sure if he even knows the Tsar is building just yet, but once that's noticed, this Tsar is going to go down very quickly. The Percival is going to be able to chunk quite heavily into the HP of it, and now we can see 12,000 HP, even though this thing is already, it was nearly 60-70% done, and now it's going to go down. Going to leave 20,000 mass on the table right here to be reclaimed and thrown into either another Tsar or even something like a GC. Could be huge. The Harbingers now starting to fight off here in the center. There's a few T1AA trying to help also deal with the broadswords along with the T3 and T2AA. The Percivals in here going to be getting a lot of damage done and going to be very dangerous for Blake. Blake's starting to just throw up as many T2PD as he can. He has a lot of engineers now building T2PD. The Percivals finally cleaned up, not really getting any major damage. They could have gone for the T3 Air HQ if they were really worried about that kind of situation. But now we have the issue of that, Blake just didn't manage to get up that Tsar, and that Tsar was going to be a huge play for him. I'm going to have to see how he approaches it from here on out. Does he go for another Tsar? No, he's going to go for a GC this time, and it's going to be built in the very cool kind of Superman or superhero kneeling position, the knight position, which is, of course, the coolest animation, I think, for any of the... Maybe the Crab has about the same level of cool animation, but the fact that you can see the GC just kneeling there and going to be standing up in not too long of a time, it's quite interesting. And overall, we have a little bit of a moment of tranquility as the game quiets down. Not really all that much going on. Both players expending a lot of their units on the field to get damage done, but nobody quite getting a huge upper hand. Right now, though, Vaangard in a very strong position. He's over 100 mass a second above his opponent. And he's now starting to set up Continentals with Percivals. He's going to be able to do some Percival drops. This is starting to look a little bit dire for Blake, who's going to be able to get up an Experimental quite quickly. He has built a lot of build power. He has a bunch of T3 engineers now built up. And of course, he has a ton of reclaim to draw from. He has enough reclaim in his main base alone to finish off this GC in a record time. So he needs to focus on that. Is he able to spend his mass, though? He's struggling to spend this economy. I'd like to see even more T3 engineers built up. If you're struggling to build your economy, to use your economy, you just have to go for stuff like this because you need reclaim. And at this stage of the game, you need reclaim to be competitive, because if your opponent's reclaiming and you're having trouble spending your mass without reclaiming, you're going to be in a bit of trouble, as Vaangard has quickly scaled up to over 400 mass a second and is now starting to be a very scary threat on the map. He's going to have a lot of T3 land. He's not going for any experimentals that I see, but oh my word, Vaangard, what is with you in the templates, man? You gotta calm down with the templates. They're very pretty, I appreciate them, but like, You have like a flower of defense here. When you get attacked and that gets destroyed, I'm going to call it deflowering. Which I'm sure the internet is so happy I just said that. If you think my jokes are cringy and you hate me, go down in the comments below and tell me how horrible of a person I am. And don't shame me for it, because that's my kink. I just love it when people go into the comments and tell me how horrible I am. It's my favorite thing about YouTube. All right, GC being built. Yet again, very tranquil. Let's look at reclaim numbers, as recently large mass deposits have been dropped down, and Blake has really caught up in the reclaim department, but he's fallen behind in the mass generation department, so going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Still hasn't started reclaiming, or I guess he has. He got about 5,000 reclaim off of the Tsar. Either that, or there was damage done to the wreck of the Tsar. And overall, it just seems as though, ooh, he has another Tsar queued up right after this GC finishes. The GC is done. Would like to see that used to clean up this army. I don't think this army is going to be strong enough to deal with the GC. And I would probably say use the GC defensively if you're going to be going for a Tsar. Use the Tsar on the attack and use the GC to defend your base, because it does seem as though if I were in Blake's position, it seems as though I'm behind on the ground. And of course, Aeon just kind of naturally loses the ground game unless you're able to micro sniper bots against UEF and Cyber. Harbingers it's an exponentially worse unit the more Percivals are on the field. The Harbinger gets worse and worse the more Percivals are built. Over here on the western side, there is a ton of Oblivions now being trying to be thrown up, but this T3, T2, T1 army out from Vaangard going to be able to clean this up pretty well. And actually, I lied. There's no T1 units there. In the center, the GC just deciding to start doling out the damage onto this army. GC decides to walk away, meaning that we're going to lose a lot of Harbingers unnecessarily, but overall, trying to keep it at a arm's length, trying to keep it from being damaged by those Percivals, but in the end, that might be the wrong call, as this GC really needs to get a decent amount of purchase on these armies coming out from Vaangard. The unit's trying to assault that GC, but that GC is just going to rank up in vet. So that was a bit of a wasted army out for Vaangard. I'm going to leave a lot of reclaim here on the doorstep, and I know I keep speaking about reclaim, but if you start building a bunch of Tsars back to back, you can definitely get in a position to win this game, especially if you focus on air production. And it does seem as though Blake has managed to get the ASF advantage. He's at 12 versus 8, which those are very low numbers, but that's still like a 40% more ASF than your opponents. Actually, probably not 40%. It might be. Somewhere close. 30% maybe. But currently, a Tsar about to finish up. The experimental pipeline for Blake going very well. He has a lot of... Okay, now is the time for Blake to get really into reclaim, and he's using the Suck Boys! He's using the Suck Boys! Yes! Ah, Blake, you are an Aeon hero. You're using the Suck Boys correctly, and I love it. I love it so much. That's the Tsar completing. Now, as I said a bit earlier, I think it's a hard call, but I think I would try and use the GC defensively. I think the GC is going to have a lot harder time pushing forward with the land production of your opponent, and I think you should focus on simply using the GC to keep your base safe. And you can get up a second GC, and maybe you can get like kind of a critical mass thing going where you have 4 or 5 GCs. Then you can push forward, but against Percivals and how many factories that Vaangard has producing Percivals, it's going to be hard. But with the low ASF counts on either side, this Tsar could be used very aggressively as long as you get in before massive amounts of T3AA are thrown up onto the field. This Tsar can be used very effectively to deal a lot of damage. It seems as though the air fight, though, for Blake has gone very poorly. He's lost, but with only 4 or 5 ASF out on the field at the moment, it's gonna be just a situation of he can push out with the Tsar anyways. The Tsar has amazing anti-air, and I think he's being a bit timid with both his GC and his Tsar. I mean, like, you have to choose one. You have to get some damage done. You've been on the back foot for so long that these experimentals are kind of your way back into the game. The Tsar coming in, going to be using its anti-air to try and kill off broadswords. It's going to be a slow process, but These missiles out from the Tsar are going to deal tons of damage to those broadswords, and those broadswords going to help give it some veterancy. Some Cougars on the ground and mixed in with some Sams from these fire bases is going to be a bit dangerous to the Tsar, but the Tsar has that 30,000 HP shield which it can rely on, and that's going to help it a little bit. Also about to get a rank of veterancy. Can't remember, does veterancy increase shield health? If it does, that'd be cool. Nope, it just increases in normal health. Another experimental, another GC completed now for Blake. I think it's time to get aggressive with these experimentals. Over here, though, we do have a large Percival army, which is kind of looking scary. Would like to see one of these GCs just committed over here to deal with this. I'm sure Blake knows of its existence. I mean, it's been fighting over here for a bit. The Tsars going over to the plateau has managed to kill off 2 of the mass extractors, still seemingly playing timid with the Tsar despite wiping the air clean. And I'd like to see the Tsar get in here and start dealing some economic damage. I really think it can get a lot done. Over here, we have a bit of fighting going on. It seems as though Vaangard is feeling the pressure, getting a little bit desperate with this double experimental over here on the eastern side, deciding to send all of his land units forward. And we really need to see this GC get some purchase here. This GC needs to do very well. Along with the fact that now the reclaim is kind of drying up for Blake, he's going for another Tsar, but is it going to be enough? He's down almost 300 mass generation per second, so he has to be hyper efficient with his armies right now. There's a lot of T2PD, which is going to be helping out with the Percivals, but it's not everything. And I think he needs to kind of reposition his army to be inside all of his buildings right here. The more that these buildings are soaking up damage, the better. This could be a huge thing for Blake, as it could be leaving another massive reclaim field for him to throw into experimentals. But he needs to be careful. His comm is over here. It could be under threat by all of the Percivals, and there's also a Percival drop now on the way. His own Tsar now starting to push in, starting to get some damage done on some of this production. He's getting a little bit more aggressive with the attack, but he needs to be careful. He needs to make sure he's not going to be kind of falling upon his own sword. You can't focus everything on this attack. You do need to defend. If you defend, then you have these experimentals, and experimentals are extremely good at dealing with this kind of play style of just having a bunch of T3 units on the field, because the GC is a lot easier to micro than 30-40 Percivals, so it just really helps you out here. The Tsar being used to focus down the anti-air in the area, which I think is a decent call. The Tsar has a lot of HP to soak up damage, but is going to start taking a lot of damage as it gets over here at the air grid, where a bunch of SAMs have been built. He does start going for the power generators of the air grid, going to be able to deal a lot of damage. If he can get over here and kill off these pigeons near these SAMs, it could be huge for him. He does manage to kill off all of the air production except for one T3 air support factory, but he starts trying to pull away from the SAMs. No, you can just kill off the SAMs. You just need to get on top of this pigeon, but no, the Tsar goes down. The GC continues to walk forward. The attack of Percival's down here towards BLAKEAuST's comm. Where's the second GC? The second GC has gone down. The army has gone down, and now Blake is in a bit of danger. He needs to run away from this. There's a bunch of Percivals now going to be dropped behind Blake's comm, so he can't really run away from this. If he notices that, now it could be very dangerous. Blake's comm in a very dangerous position. The GC starting to move towards... Oh no, the Percivals. The Percival's alpha. Blake putting up a huge fight. He had the GC nearly within range of Vaangard, but Vaangard with this defense, I think, could have killed the GC. And with that, you have your victor, the TUEF Turtle. A man with the templates wins this game. Thank you all for joining me today. You all have been beautiful. Thank you to the Patreons. Thank you to the channel members. Consider supporting me via Patreon or the channel membership down below. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. Every subscription helps. And like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, dislike if you didn't like it. You're beautiful. Goodbye.